Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Artillery Bombardment, Part 1, written by Ordnance. For cycles, we had been war with the Flynn. A bloody war the galactic community thought too low of a squabble to interfere in. Even when disregarded, the war resulted in the deaths of billions. Our war, to them, was only the war of two backwater starfaring nations, too far away to help, yet close enough to tax. Utter rubbish, you ask me. But how can we even demand our rights to be upheld when our fleets are being torn apart, our worlds burning? I've heard stories that the galactic community supposedly thought of raising the monthly fee they demand like overlords, all in the name of better protecting us. I wonder where that protection was when Eidolon 7 burned. Where were our defenders when one of our core worlds, Holland 2, was fractured and torn asunder, with those still unfortunate enough to be on it, destined to suffer horrific deaths? Our politicians made one last plea recently, one last cry before our entire people may just end up cast into the void by the Flynn. The news on this meeting was quiet at first. Nobody expected anything. Nothing had happened for cycles from these pointless, pathetic shows the community put on. However, on some news broadcasts, there were stories of a new member of the community. Human, or something along those lines. Another to ignore our desperate begging, all while lining their pockets, to be sure. Our politicians had returned with tears streaming down their faces, as finally, someone would come to their aid. The people didn't seem to believe it. Most certainly not me. Not after being in so many pointless last stands. Seeing how overwhelmingly we were losing to the Flynn. How could this newer nation even assist us? This far gone. We wouldn't even be able to repay them. My thoughts continued into a downward spiral, even more so as I was shipped out to another core world under attack. Helio. It didn't have a number designation. This was a true home planet to us, one I didn't mind dying on, even if it was worthless in the end. A quarter into the cycle of my shipment out to Helio, and I'm now in a trench taking potshots at the Flynn as their weapons of war approach us. The disadvantage we had against them is laughable. We were never good with war, so we gave up on it as a species, focused on other things. See how far that got us now. Crap! Enough monologuing. The Flynn are coming. Sergeant Urine, my name was called out by my commander as he trudged towards me, his hooves nimbly finding their way through the muddy trench. I hear we've got reinforcements coming. We should only have to hold out for another hour at the least. My heart sank. Another hour of this? The sounds of weapons fire and explosions causing my ears to ring and my antennae to shrink down. Yet even while my body was growing concerned for its survival, I was mentally used to this by now. Another hour, sir. There's just no way that we can hold out for that long. The Flynn, Sergeant, I know. We just have to do what we can for this 1 hour and pray that the stars it's enough. My commander spoke in a tired voice and lifted himself briefly over the trench, firing off a few pot shots. It resulted in an intense explosion, and I was worried one of the war machines of the Flynn had returned fire. So I snapped my head up to look at my commander. He was still there, however. His face had become slack, his eyes wide in surprise. The explosion rang out, again and again. The entire battlefield before my eyes had turned to plumes of smoke and shrapnel. The explosions didn't seem to be letting up either, and as I turned my gaze to the sky, it was darkened. I was horrified. The sky only darkened in such a way when something was about to damage the very planet. Commander, the sky is darkening. The commander looked up, Yet he didn't seem afraid. In fact, he seemed confused. Not like that, Sergeant. I've seen those skies before. This is far different and, early. They said an hour. Just as he finished speaking, a bipedal creature jumped in. I was too shocked to even try and point my gun at the creature, who soon spoke. An hour? Holy hell! Did your guys mistranslate us or what? We told your high command it'll take us about 10 minutes to get set up, and another 5 minutes to get boots on the ground over here. The creature seemed disgruntled, and only then did I find my voice. You're a human. One of the new members of the community. Why are you... My voice trailed off, deafening by the sound of the explosions. When would those ever stop? Yep, I'm what you call a human, though that whole community thing is just for show, so those slimy bastards will leave us alone. How could we truly side with pricks who would leave an entire world to burn like this? The human's face contorted. Its eyes were filled with anger, strong enough to cause not just me, but even my commander to backpedal a few steps. It seemed to notice and raised its hands. Forgive me. I've heard Xenos can be a bit flaky when presented with the full brunt of our emotions like that. Don't worry, we're on your side, so is that. It pointed to the explosions as it seemed to finally cease. Ship-to-surface bombardment with weaponry we've used for centuries. Massive guns always get the job done. Or, as it is called on the ground, artillery. These, what were they? Flen? Yeah? They don't stand a chance. The creature seemed to puff out its chest before taking a more focused look at it seemed to receive communications. We can't stand around anymore. First volley was a test run to see how well it fared within this atmosphere, and if the planet could handle more. Get everyone to leave these trenches and fall back to your nearest base. Those shells are about to get a lot bigger. End of Part 1. Story 2. Artillery Bombardment Part 2, written by Ordnance. Perspective. Osenti Sergeant Urine. The human had told us to fall back, and my commander relayed that order. With haste, our entire battalion pulled back from the front. I led my squad as we ran across the war-torn ground towards our nearest base. If it could even be considered a base. It was more of a hurried outpost built solely for logistics. I focused my thoughts on moving my legs, and on the human and its own soldiers managing to run with ease along the ground despite being bipedal. Another thing I was beginning to notice was the difference in stamina. These humans, do they ever get tired? I grumbled to myself and could hear others around me doing the same, as their legs were certainly complaining the same as mine. Focus! We're nearing the base. After what felt like hours of running, but had been only nearly a single hour at most, we were through the gates. We shuffled inside, yet the humans who had taken the lead stood outside, gazing off towards the battlefield. What are you all looking at? Did the Flen follow us? I panicked for a moment, my grip tightening around the handle of my weapon. A stranded plasma bolter was issued to everyone in our army, a far cry from the Flen's weaponry in terms of effectiveness. However, both looked completely different from the weapons humanity used. Huh? Oh yeah, it seems like it, but they're still pretty far back. The initial shelling seemed to stun them for a while. The human turned away and began speaking in some strange language. It was only now I realized that we had been speaking in my native language without any issue. I was so used to my own language that I hadn't noticed an alien who was also speaking my language, and fluently at that. The human was speaking into a device and to the soldiers around him, relaying information and orders most likely. I stood and waited for them to finish. It turned back to face me with a somehow unfazed look, even though it had just admitted that the enemy was closing in on us. Now that we've fallen back and the ships in orbit know the target area is clear, they can finally fire for effect. The human gazed back out at the battlefield. I followed the human's gaze, looking out onto the battlefield. I could see them faintly, the war machines of the Flen. I shook my body to the core. I was out in the open, exposed to their weapons. I had to run. Death was coming for me. A firm grip on my shoulder stabilized me, and I could see the group of human soldiers gazing down at me with worried expressions. My breathing was out of rhythm, and my twin hearts were thumping irregularly. "Calm down, Sergeant. Those machines aren't in range, and I assure you that they won't make it much further." The human's voice helped soothe my worry. It was a soft voice, even amidst the battle. Yet, when I looked up, the one who spoke, the raw anger was back from the last time. This time, however, this emotion came from each human. It was overwhelming. The human who had spoken to me spoke once again, this time in its language, or at least what I thought was its language. "Give these bastards hell, Captain Jiro." The humans around the one speaking moved their heads up and down in the same gesture. Their piercing gazes stared down at the field in wait. In the next moment, a whistling sound filled my ears. No, it had filled the very air itself. A shadow loomed over our heads, and in the next moment, the planet shook. Where the Flen machines once stood as unstoppable menaces, only smoke remained. The ground was littered with craters as the rumbling continued. I could hear the sum of my own kind's screams. One of the screams may have been my voice. The very planet was shaking. A horror beyond horror for us. My commander strode out and stopped once he caught sight of what remained of the battlefield. Even he seemed stunned. But as expected of a commander, he quickly collected himself and turned to face the humans. "That shaking, was it you? Will the planet be fine?" My commander's voice held a mixture of distrust and fear. Our saviors could potentially be demons themselves. I could easily understand his thoughts in this. The humans seemed to pause for a moment, long enough to cause my heart to sink. "Well, the planet will be fine, but you probably won't be doing much farming in this area for a while. Sorry about that." The human scratched its chin and lowered its head briefly in front of the commander. "The planet will be fine." The commander and I each let out a breath, our hearts slowly calming down. "Thank you, humans. You have defended our home and no one else has." The commander crossed his front legs together and lowered his head, a sign of true thanks. "You're talking like this is over." A smile played out on the human's lips, and the rest followed suit. It sent fear racing down our spines. The smile of a predator with its prey within its grasp. "We still have to fully remove the Flen's presence from this planet. Then after that, we reclaim your lost systems. Then after that, I'd be a retaliatory strike into Flen territory. Get them to surrender, then it's our diplomat's job." One of the humans suddenly slung a bag over their shoulder and pulled some slab from it. A data pad from the looks of it. The human spoke in its language, though the tone was far different from the other. "Sir, we've got the coordinates of the nearest Flen outpost and possible sightings of their supply routes. Intelligence says that they are tracing back at the supply routes and checking where other bases are. Then most will be marked for bombardment." "I see. So that makes our job clearing out this outpost and any other base command deemed worthy while searching the bases for information. Understood, Specialist Manova. Keep me updated." The human finished, speaking and looking back at my commander. It once again articulated with ease in our language again. "We have orders to head to the nearest Flen base and capture it, then search it. There will be 2 platoons left here for defense and communication." The human raised their hand on top of their head before turning around. "Oh, wait!" Our commander spoke a moment before I could. "You're already going to move out. Don't you need to recover and rest, aren't you, He didn't finish the sentence, but the rest was obvious. Aren't they afraid? How are they not afraid to charge into enemy territory? The commander gazed at them questioningly. The human let out a breath through its nostrils before speaking. "Sir, you don't win wars by spending vital time recovering and resting. The Flen are reeling from this blow, and we need to keep the pressure on. It's been an honor to personally fight by your side." The human repeated its previous gesture of moving its hand to its forehead. "Let's move out!" The human shouted in its own language again and turned away from the commander. The squad of humans walked away together towards the beaten and battered battlefield that awaited them. "Commander," I spoke without realizing it, my eyes shifting to focus on him. Yeah, I know. We might truly be saved. The commander sniffed and tightened his grip on his weapon. The air the commander was giving off was different. You heard what the human said, Sergeant Yearn. The Unsanti must learn to strike back. We've only been defending ourselves since the war began, always too stunned and afraid to truly fight back. He went quiet for a moment and faced me fully. His eyes steeled with determination. It is time that we change that, bit by bit. End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 patrons and channel members. Alithia, Barky, Fudic Yol, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Arnholtz, White Band 420, Lord Asrakal, Arcalian, and Oakfield.